research today, and it wasn't nearly as extensive as I wanted to get done, but I was looking more into this whole, is the climate change thing a hoax?
No.
And, I've come across a couple of very, very interesting numbers. Now, I'm not going to be able to quote the direct numbers, but I'll give you a gist of things. What was interesting is that there's a group. See, by the way, folks, this is why I don't run my own podcast, and this is why I'm not going to run a news agency, because I don't have notes. I'm going by a foggy ass shitty memory that I have. So deal with it.
Fake news.
Pretty much. But really what it comes down to is that there's a group of scientists that are funded through donation and what the fuck was it? Some sort of a grant through the government. Again, that's actually specifically funded by the people instead of, this is in the U.S., by the way, not in Canada. It's funded by some private organization sort of thing. So basically the whole point of this is the grant is done by, like, it's applied for by groups that they don't, it's supposed to be done by people who don't have an agenda. It's basically they're basically just giving you free money. Say, look, if you want to research something that is being told by one group, and if you want to do a private thing to see if it's actually true or not, then basically we'll help fund it.
Right.
So these guys are running off all these different types of information through, and they've been doing this for a few years now, doing also information on climate change and if it's actually really true or not. And the interesting thing is their conclusions as to date so far still stands as climate change, as we're being told, doesn't exist. Is there a change in the climate? Yes. Is it drastic enough to make a difference? No. Are we on an upswing for temperature? Yes. Is it part of how everything has been going according to history? Yes. There is according to this, there is absolutely no actual scientific evidence that states that we are in a state that we can't easily just do minor things to basically, make a minor difference.
That's true.
We're not in a state of emergency in any shape or form. The neat thing about the article was that it did say that if you want to worry about something that's bad for the climate, so we should start focusing back on Japan and the leak of the the nuclear reactor, which is funny because I just talked about that fucking last night.
Yeah.
So they actually made reference to it, but it was really interesting because they're going for it. They published tons of links and reports and papers and their findings, and it's kind of terrifying.
The thing with these studies is it depends on the size of your study group too, and you'll find the larger the group, the more you will find consensus that scientists agree of that we are contributing to global warming. If the bigger you get, it gets to be between 90 and 100% of scientists agree.
But there's one interesting thing about that group of scientists. They're all funded by the same group of people that are said to be behind the original statement of this. So basically, it's no different than the media as it stands. It's just we're telling you, here's how you're going to look at the evidence. Here's how you're going to prove what we're telling you that that's real. And they're pointing them in this very specific direction by having them ignore other points of information.
Yeah, but what I was saying is, if you, the more you reach out to scientists that aren't touched by groups like that, the bigger your group of scientists you ask, the more consensus you get amongst them. So if you asked every scientist on Earth, you'd get the answer that yes, humans are contributing. But the less people you ask, the more you can skew your result.
See, but that's just it, because, when you see certain trends, how they do it, and this is the thing that got me on one of these graphs that it was showing, saying, "Here, look how here's a graph showing the last whatever it was 500,000 years, and here's how I guess it must have been millions of years, and here's how the trend goes for heating and cooling of the planet." And it goes to these graphs, and there's a lot of them that are very similar. But the funny thing is if you take that same graph and then you just sort of bring it into a more closer detail. So instead of having each line span the course of, say, 10,000 years, you have the same line that spans the course of, say, 100 years. And suddenly this graph takes a wildly different look. There's peaks and valleys that you don't see on this other thing.
Oh, sure.
And when you start lining up all these points across, and you literally put a line right across the graph of this closer looking at the timeline, we're pretty much directly on course with everything that's gone on for the planet. Nothing's really changed. There's no major difference, and we are not in this state of emergency where everything is going to die.
Right.
Now, it did talk about how, pollution and mankind in general are killing the animals. There's a lot of animals, insects, birds, whatever, mammals that are being destroyed, killed, and wiped off the planet because of humans. That's all completely true.
Definitely.
But we're in no way up to be against this massive thing of heat that's going to kill us. Never seeing fucking an ice age. Cooling period is never going to happen again. Apparently, it's just flat out not true, and the evidence supports it.
But that's
what they're doing. They're releasing information from a skewed version, and they're using graphs and numbers based off of not taking everything into account.
There could
It's
be.
It's the same thing of what I dealt with at the fucking knife company with the manager. Mike, because he was a dick. He was an idiot. He would take a very skewed point of numbers and say, "You're not performing." Well, sure. If you're going to look at just that part of the numbers, sure, I'm not performing. But if you look at the bigger picture that I was producing, the most knife sharpenings of the company, the highest fucking customer compliment rate, the fact that the store was still producing numbers and budgets that it hadn't produced in years, with the previous years that wasn't with the company. If you start factoring in all the numbers and all the information, suddenly I'm not doing so shitty.
Oh yeah, but we could do that with anything. We could do that with our stats. I could skew our numbers to look fantastic every day. Although they do, because you guys are awesome. But
yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. I mean, when you're talking about the environment, the globe, if you're talking about the planet, the face for the planet, you can't use skewed information. You have to use all of it. You have to be honest about it. You can't lie and tell this fear-mongering bullshit that there's a problem when there probably just really isn't.
But there could be. And, the group of scientists that are saying there isn't you have to be as skeptical as them as the group that says there is. Because I can produce a bunch of studies that say there is. And say that those people that say there isn't are misleading you and only a small portion of them.
But if you take the other person, if you take one group's results and actually look into them, and you're just saying, okay, look, here's your results. This is what you're saying proves that this is happening. I have your results here in front of me. But yet when I'm looking a closer look at this, all of a sudden your results aren't what you're saying they are. That's literally what this group is.
Sure.
That makes it a difference. That's now you're not, because again, when you're talking science, you're talking facts. If you're talking facts, you're talking science,
I can present.
You've got to base it off of the whole thing. It's not a matter of what you present.
Yeah, but you're not basing it off the whole thing. Because there's a great website called Skeptical Science. Skepticalscience.com. You look at that, it says the exact opposite of everything you're saying. And it's a group of scientists who are claiming to not be sponsored by anyone, who are trying to disprove what sponsored scientists are saying. It's called the Consensus Project. They do it for all sorts of peer-reviewed papers and trying to quantify scientific consensus, and saying that the scientists who say there's consensus, there really isn't. No position abstracts are being included. Some of them are using fake, or filling out surveys more than once, and the ratings are not reliable. So we could go back and forth on this until we're blue in the face. Contrary opinions on global warming are 2 to 3% of a fringe of minority peer-reviewed papers, and 97% of scientists agree. Over 90% of climate scientists believe we're causing global warming. It's settled.
I'm not going to say that we're not. I'm not saying that we're not causing global warming. I'm just calling absolute bullshit on the fact that they're claiming that basically we're 11 years away from fucking death. I'm just bullshit. They did the same thing in the 80s when they said that we were on a 10-year fucking thing. The earth is going to fucking fry and burn in 10 years.
And that's what I said.
And look what happened in that 10 years between the 80s and the 90s.
That's what I said the same thing months ago. I said the name of the episode is "You Don't Know, I Don't Know, Leonardo DiCaprio Doesn't Know, Everybody Calm Down." That's what we really need a consensus on, is the fact that we don't fucking know. And we need scientists to not be on any side of the debate, sit down, be scientific, and figure out what the fuck's going on. Because we don't have a clue.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's my point exactly. This is what frustrates me about this, because everybody's using this as a platform for something, but how much of this information is completely skewed, and I just don't see it. We're in June, and I'm fucking out here in a sweater. Come on.
I'm glad you came around to the point that I was trying to make whenever we did that last episode on the subject, when I was talking about Nardo. See, we're always right. We might not agree, but we both come around to the right sooner or later. And you're right. The fact of the matter is we don't know. Nobody knows.
So then why are they coming out saying they do? And that's what bugs me.
Because they have to. They can't be wrong.
But they also could release and say it's inconclusive, or it's not that they can be honest.
Yeah, but that's not political enough. No one's going to let you say that, because that doesn't get votes.
See, and that's the frustrating thing. Science is supposed to be anti-political.
You're not going to get a bunch of scientists saying, "Oh, this pipeline is not bad," because then the conservatives aren't paying them enough, or a bunch of them coming out and saying, "Oh, this pipeline should be stopped, and we're scientists and we agree with Justin Trudeau and his Senate." Well, that's not going to get him votes up north, because the people up north want it. So he's got to get a bunch of scientists that say it's okay for them. It's nothing's about the science. Nobody cares about the science. They just care about winning elections. That's all it's about now.
God, I want to disband the government so bad.
Stephen Harper did a very good job of silencing scientists.
Yeah, that he certainly did.
People thought that was censorship and that was bad and it was so wrong, and scientists are getting the short end of the stick on this deal. Well, no, not really. What we were getting was scientists who were reporting on science and politicians who were doing politics, and the two were not influencing each other for all his years in office. It wasn't they were just being censored and, don't ask, we're not allowed to ask scientists anything, and Harper's such a tyrant. No, he was keeping it out of the politics. He was keeping both those schools of thought pure. I know people hate me for saying he was a good man, but people misunderstood him very much.
I'm going to be honest. I thought that for the most part, I thought he was doing a good job for the most part, because they fixed the deficit. They ran the country actually in the black for the end part of it, which was awesome. I know he did good. My only thing with him at the end of it was I just found that at the very end, he was sounding. It sounded like he was just going a little bit too far right.
Yeah, well,
and he was going to take things a little bit too far, and I think that's for me. That's just what sort of I'm like, oh, that sucks. I mean, I'll be honest, I'd rather him in fucking power than fucking Trudeau.
Yeah.
But
we're coming up on our hour almost already. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Gordon. Everything you said, and that's the thing we have to get to, is that these things can't be. It's like religion and politics. They're supposed to be separate.
Yes.
Science and politics need to be separate. They